And welcome, welcome, welcome. This is Peter Winick. I'm the founder and CEO of Thought Leadership Leverage, and you're joining us on our podcast today, Leveraging Thought Leadership, and I thank you for that. Today, my guest is Eric Lofholm. Eric's a master sales trainer, and I'll give you just some quick highlights on Eric. My favorite in his bio is Eric began his career as a sales failure. So it's a great way to begin a career, not a great way to end a career, right? He's a gifted teacher. He has delivered over 1,500 public and private presentations, and his core focus is obviously around sales and being more effective and more proficient at the art and science of selling. So, Eric, thank you. Welcome aboard, and thanks for joining us today.
Peter, I'm excited to be here.
Great. So, how do you go from being a sales failure to a content business success? I guess is.
Yeah, it's quite a leap, And early in my career, I was told that I had to hit my quota the next month, or I was going to be fired. And now I'm recognized as an elite sales trainer. So what happened was I met a brilliant sales mind, a guy named Dr. Donald Moyne, who's one of the brightest sales minds in the world today, taught me his system. And I went from the bottom producer at that company to the top producer within 60 days.
Wow.
And then I started teaching what he taught me to my coworkers because that's what I love doing. Just even if I wasn't being paid for it, I just love to teach and share. It's part of my natural gifting. And I found that I was really good at teaching his principles. And so I wasn't doing it for a fee at that point. I went to work for Tony Robbins, who we all have heard of and know. So I was with Tony for 3 years and just learned a lot about training a training company and how it works and so forth. And then in 1999, I branched off and started my current company and have been doing professional sales training ever since.
That's great. So you mastered a methodology. You saw firsthand the impact that it had immediately on your profession, on your career, on your results. You started to teach others because you like to teach, right? They got great results. And then you sort of moved on and worked with Tony and then broke out on your own to do this. So, given that you've been at this quite some time, what do you see that is the same and what's different in terms of growing and scaling and leveraging a content-based business? So, what hasn't changed and what's changed a lot in from your perspective?
Well, what's the same as content is king. I mean, at the end of the day, no matter what your delivery method is, your pricing structure, social media, you got to deliver great content that's going to impact your audience in the way that you want to impact them. So for me, as a sales trainer, at the end of the day, I want to help people make more sales. And so
So whether that meant 20 years ago door to door or direct sales or B2B, whatever, before social, you got to get more people to sell more stuff for your stuff to be considered a success.
if somebody's going to hire me nowadays, they might want to know how to leverage social media, fill up their calendar. But at the end of the day, it's about results. And influence hasn't changed. Influence is influence. The way we reach people now is very different with technology. One of the main differences in my business now is back in the day, in the late 90s, in the early 2000s, all my training was either in a company or in a hotel ballroom. Now, although I still do that, it's pretty rare. Most of my training is done virtually through like a recorded webinar or a live webinar or a conference call with a team. Companies are more reluctant to, if it's a nationwide company, fly everybody in to do a training. They just rather do it virtually. And I think people in general would rather have the content on demand versus having to be forced into like a 2-day boot camp. And so I had to change my entire business model, and that was very, very painful. But we did pivot.
Let me ask you about that because in my work, frequently I'm working with clients that are really, really good at what they do. So what you said at first resonates. Content's got to be good, right? So period. There's no tricks around that. But the business models have become antiquated where they've been making great money and have had great success doing it one way, whether it's 1-day workshops or 3-day workshops or whatever it is. But the whole face-to-face workshop business where the hotels love that, right? American Airlines loves that, but companies don't love it, right? Because it's not just the time away from the desk, but now I have to compound your fees with hotel fees, food, travel, et cetera, et cetera. And a lot of people, they resist changing modalities until it's almost too late. So I love that you did it a while ago and that it was a little bit painful. But what would you say to someone that's sitting out there now and they've got a good workshop business and they've got a good sort of, ballroom business or whatever, and that maybe they're not in enough pain, but how would you counsel them?
Well, I think what anybody should do, whether they're a content creator, coach, an author, or just a regular business person or whatnot, just look out into the future and look at the likely predictable future. So if you look at like Blockbuster, they're looking at, Redbox and Netflix, and I think they kind of have their head in the sand, and that's why Blockbuster doesn't exist anymore. And it didn't take a rocket scientist to figure out the trend of where things were headed. And so if you just look at it and go, the trend is going to continue to online training because it's efficient, can be just as effective. In some ways, it's superior because you can just watch specific modules. You don't have to sit through a full day training. So if you just look at where are things headed, and then from there you'll realize you need to pivot or you're going to, become obsolete. And so I looked at it and for me it was adapt or die. It was either I adapt or I'm out of business. And
But sometimes people don't want to see the reality. So oftentimes I'll talk to a client and I'll say the same thing, or a potential client, and then I'll have to push a little bit more. And I said, okay, well, today compared to 5 years ago, or 7 years ago, or 8 years ago, is it easier to fill up those rooms or harder? It's, oh my God, it's much harder, right? We've got to do way more marketing. And, at the end of the day, we're canceling half our programs because we didn't get the minimum we needed to run it profitably. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a pretty strong signal, right? Like the signals are there, but we're either, they're either in denial or, sometimes it's fear, right? So I'm really good on my feet standing up in front of a room of 40 people. I don't know this whole digital tech thing. So tell me a little bit about your journey moving from successful in room training to distance and remote and digital, because what did you have to learn and where did you skin your knee along the way?
it starts with resistance because we tend to resist what's new. And it doesn't matter what it is, just something new. It's like immediately, no, I don't want to do that. And so when I was introduced to webinars, I was immediately like, I don't want to do that. Well, why not? If I really analyze it, because it's new, it's uncomfortable, it's out of my comfort zone. And so
I might not be good at it, right?
yeah, it's just the unknown. And the reality is, a webinar is you're still delivering the same content that you would front of the room. You might have to tweak it a little bit because you can't break people into groups in the same way that you can on a webinar. But it starts with that mindset of taking action in the face of resistance is really what it comes down to. And then from there, then it's getting educated on the different software choices and not necessarily needing to find the perfect software solution for your delivery method, but just find something, get started. All the webinar platforms, they all work pretty similar. The CRMs work pretty similar, and so you can always pivot to a better one to meet your needs moving forward. But I'd get in the game. And you need my son, he's 16. He just got his driver's license. But you need to get 25,000 driving miles under your belt because you can drive right now, but I mean, don't even think about looking at your phone while you're driving because right now you need 25,000 miles under your belt so you can start understanding the patterns of how other cars drive and so forth. Well, it's no different with using these technologies. Right now I'm talking into a computer, you're doing whatever you're doing on your end to communicate with me. Just talking into a computer, it takes some used to. You want to get reps under your belt. And then what happens is you can start thinking in a distinction. So, what that means is that I first started doing webinars to replace me going into a company and selling my training program. That was my core business model. I would go up at your office, do a little free talk, and sell my course. And so I'm like, all right, instead of showing up to the office, I'm going to do a webinar, and then at the end, I'm going to sell the course. I had no other vision of how to use webinars at that point. But once I started getting comfortable with webinars, I was like, oh, I can use them to help onboard a client. I can populate a YouTube channel. I can use it for in-house corporate training. And so what happens is your imagination will then discover all these different ways that you can utilize these technologies. For example, I'll upload a webinar into my private Facebook group. I didn't have that thought in the beginning. So You want to just have the mindset, take action in the face of resistance. That sentence is gold.
That's great. When I love the fact that I mean, all you knew in the beginning was the webinar is a more efficient way than driving to a client's office, doing your pitch, and then blah 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 from there. And then once you got your sort of to continue the analogy, the 25,000 miles under your belt, you saw endless possibilities and ways to use it, both for marketing and for direct revenue generation. Let me ask you a little bit of a different question. So that's going digital. One of the things that people, primarily authors and thought leaders and speakers and such, sometimes have a little bit difficulty with is I know when I'm delivering a 2-day program, I'm on my feet and I control the environment in the room and I break people up, and we have so much content. This is the way we do it, module 1, module 2, module whatever. When you're moving to distance learning and when you're moving to digital, no one in the history of the universe has ever sat in front of a computer for 16 hours 2 days in a row to learn, right? So how do you chunk it out into nuggets, because people they don't want to learn that much in a short period of time anymore. And if we're not flying them to San Diego and or wherever, we don't need to do that. So how do you rethink as a teacher the best way to put it out there in smaller doses?
Yeah, I just did a mid-year planning class, and it was 3 modules. Each module's 30 minutes of content, and we did a Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, and so it was whatever that is, 8 days, 7 days to deliver it, and then 30 minutes of content, and there was notes, and then there was a homework assignment, and then there was through the entire course there was one deliverable that they were to create. It was an overall a 6-month plan to produce. And so to your point, it wasn't like a 1-day workshop. It was 3 30-minute modules, and I think 30 minutes for a live webinar followed by Q&A is a real good time frame. I like providing written notes. I like giving them assignments in between classes. So it does require some thought into how you want to deliver the content. And I'm a big believer, when possible, to I call it a deliverable. Like, have them do something that the purpose of this class is for you to get your script done, or for you to get your plan done, or for you to get your company values created, or your mission statement, or whatever it is. So they actually get something done out of it.
Well, when you say something done, I love that you're talking about something tangible, right? Because I think the difference is when we're students, undergrad or high school, whatever the case is, the theoretical is often important in core disciplines. When we're business people, right, and we're working 50, 60 hours a week and we have stuff to do and whatever, that the theoretical is a luxury that we don't have. We need to figure out how to apply that really, really, really soon. So in your case, if I worked with you Tuesday, Thursday, Tuesday, and when I finished on that Tuesday, whatever that is, 8 days later, I have a 6-month plan that's actually custom tailored to me and actionable, and instilled in that is your content in terms of how to do that. That's time well spent.
Yeah, and you're pumped out of it. And what's cool is you're pumped not because of me, but because of what you created.
Relevance.
So it really, like, it kind of takes it off of me having to be this dynamic trainer. I mean, obviously I want to be as good as I can be, but if I guide you to create this document and you actually follow through, you're confident, you're excited, you're like, wow, that was a great training. And if I didn't give you the assignment, if I just, gave you all this brilliant content and you agreed it was really, really great, but you didn't do a plan because I didn't guide you to do it, now it's really putting the pressure on me. I better be absolutely dynamic. If I'm just okay, but you got a plan done, you're feeling the values.
And if you didn't give me the framework or the tools to show me how to apply it, then that burden's on me. And because I've never done that before, probability is I'm not going to do it well. But you in this instance, you specifically said we're going to leave here with a 6-month plan, and it's not a generic plan; it's your plan. So I love that.
This is something I did for the public to draw people to me. Hey, sign up for my class. You can come do it for free. Well, then I took the concept to a company and I said, hey, I got this really great planning course. Would you like me to do a private one for your company? And so they hired me, distance learning, did a 3-module class for them. And I don't know, 100 of their people created the plan, whatever it was. And so that was another example of thinking in a distinction. Once you can think in that idea, there's so much possibility available to do this distance learning and really create value. I don't have to hop on a plane. They don't have to rent the hotel ballroom. They don't have to have their staff, take blocks of big days off to do it. It's a great way to go.
Cool. What else would you advise someone that's either first coming on the scene now, so they're probably going to avoid that workshop phase and go as quickly to digital as you can. Doesn't mean you eliminate workshop, but making that their core business. Someone that's either coming on the scene now, or someone that's been there for a while and been really successful in a somewhat antiquated format. What are the couple things you would tell them? You absolutely must do this, and don't do that.
One thing is using that car example, get the 25,000 miles under your belt, like start getting your feet wet with this technology because you want to it's different when you're interacting with people through a virtual format. For example, I use GoToWebinar and there's a hand raise button. So I can say to the audience, how many of you just got value from the point I just shared? Hit the hand raise button or type into the question feature, if I'm asking them a question. So I can have that interaction with them, but it's done in a virtual way. I can unmute them. You got to get comfortable, like not seeing somebody and having that feedback because it is a very different way of communicating when you have a lot of front of the room experience. So you really want to go for repetition, just get reps under the belt. And the other thing I would say, try different formats. I've tried so many different things. You find what works. Obviously, the things that work, you keep doing it. And so be open to trying new things. You don't have the hotel ballroom expense. I have a sunk cost with my GoToWebinar. So if I try something and it doesn't work, I don't have, a couple grand on the line, for example. So, I would try new things. The last thing I'd say is look for collaborative relationships. Look for people where you can work in synergy. I'm working on a deal with Les Brown right now, and we're talking about the original idea was to do a live seminar where we would have a sales force that would go into companies and promote the seminar. And so we're kicking that idea around. I said, Les, I think we're better off going to churches. Why don't we go to churches and we'll do the seminar to the members of the church, but it'll be open to the public so anybody can come. We're still planning and we haven't pulled the trigger yet, but the bottom line is it's us collaborating together and then looking for churches within communities that see value, and so we're not having to do it all by ourselves. How do we work together? And so I love collaborative relationships.
So in that example, it's the combination of the content and the community, right? So the church has a higher probability of having a close relationship with X number of people in the community that they can market something through. So it's really a marketing and distribution channel. You've got your content. If you're not burdened with the marketing or can find a way to get into a community that you don't have a relationship with vis-a-vis a church, that's a win-win, right?
And we also want to live stream.
Oh,
so then we go into the virtual space. So now we can double or triple the audience through live stream. But you're right. See, at the end of the day, if you want to train, you got to find the people to train. So what Jay Abraham taught me was go find somebody who already has a relationship with the people you want to train. So in this case, a 10,000 member church, they could then go to those 10,000 members and say, hey, Eric and Les are going to be coming to do a special event here at our church. It's open to the public. You're all invited. And so then our core audience to justify the live event, we can get the attendance that we need. And then the virtual is the gravy on top of it. That's the idea that we're kicking around.
Well, that's great. So lots of great stuff, lots of great ideas from someone that's been there, done that, and continues to enhance, improve, do what he does better every day. How do people find you, Eric?
Simple way. I'm all over social media. I'm big on Facebook. So just type in my name, Eric Lofholm. My core website, it's saleschampion.com. Very active on social media. So, find me there and we can connect.
Good. Well, I appreciate your time and thank you for sharing all that you did with us today.
You're welcome, Peter. And thanks for all that you're doing out in the world, helping speakers and coaches and consultants get their message out. The work that you do, it's brilliant. It's needed. And anybody that works with you, they're going to be very, very fortunate to have your expertise on their team.
Oh, I appreciate that. Thank you. I couldn't have written that better myself, and it's more authentic when it was impromptu like that. So I appreciate that very much, Eric. Thank you. Have a great one, everybody, and thank you for joining us today. To learn more about Thought Leadership Leverage, please visit our website at thoughtleadershipleverage.com. To reach me directly, feel free to email me at peter@thoughtleadershipleverage.com. And please subscribe to Leveraging Thought Leadership on iTunes or your favorite podcast app to get your weekly episode automatically.